What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be breaking down Tankathon's brand new updated mock draft after the most recent round of playoff games going into the conference championships. If you guys are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Below my face is my board. It is based on my all 22 grades, which are reinforced on my X with all 22 clips. Feel free to go check those out on the link tree below. Also, feel free to go and use our sponsor of the show, which is UnderDog Fantasy. It's the top link there, or just put in code HAILMARY when you end up signing up, and you get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. And you know what? It's a perfect time to do it because you get to be able to bet on tomorrow's game, which is the national championship. Super excited for that. We will be streaming that as well. Tankathon does all 100 picks, but when looking at the third round, they had a couple guys who are returning to school. So I just didn't really want to put either of us through that. We're going to go through the top 64. We're going to go through the first two rounds because I think that's going to be a good way rather than just doing a standard 32 pick mock the mock, because we also want to be able to have some good time talking about some new draft prospects linked to certain teams. It's always fun to do this because, yeah, we'll be reviewing another mock draft tomorrow, but this is like brand new, fully updated, excited to be able to bring it to you guys. And it's 9:30. Who doesn't want to sleep? I don't. I actually kind of do. But let's get into this. Let's have a good time. I ended up spending the day with my parents being able to watch the games, so hopefully you guys enjoyed them as much as I did. With number one pick, the Titans go Shedeur Sanders. I have a sneaking suspicion Shedeur will be slipping more than expected, but right now the quarterbacks at 1, 2, and or 3 definitely kind of seems like the probable thing right now. Again, the question is, would Shedeur Sanders be a top 5 quarterback in last year's draft? The answer is yes. Then you take him at 1. If the answer is no, you got some soul searching to do. So, I mean, I do have my concerns there. I do like Shedeur. He is my QB1, but technically both Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are QB1 for completely different reasons. You're never going to be truly asking yourself, do I want Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders? The question is, what system do I want to run? What is my vision for my franchise quarterback? Is it Shedeur's archetype or is it Cam's archetype? Because right now the Titans are very moldable, and you can end up seeing a bright future with either quarterback. But the question is, which one do you want more, or what direction are you trying to take the franchise in? And number 3, because I technically just spoke about 1 and 2, I'd prefer to go after the more valuable players if it was solely up to me. Travis Hunter goes at number 3 to the New York Giants. Kind of like best player available. People say, hey, he's not the best corner, not the best receiver. Could be the best receiver. It's a pretty bad wide receiver group. But at the same time, what happens if he focuses on one position? That's where you could possibly see an elevation of his talent to be able to be at the highest degree. So it's not a bad pick at all. Abdul Carter goes at number 4 to the Patriots. I'll fully support it if the time comes. I do think he's a very overrated run defender, but I do think his pass rushing, if you're looking for a pass rushing edge rusher, this is phenomenal. And he's not bad at run defense. It's just people don't bring it up as a legitimate criticism of his game. At number 5, you got Mason Graham going to the Jaguars. Defensive interior is perfectly reasonable. I prefer corner, but let's see what they do in round 2, because I think that will determine how much I love this pick. I don't think Mason Graham is on that tier that, Jalen Carter was, which I think qualifies for a top 5 and pick for a defensive interior. But Mason Graham is certainly a very good player nonetheless. Will Johnson goes at pick number 6 to the Raiders. I think they could absolutely use Will Johnson as a very strong constructive piece. I don't know if you end up getting Ben Johnson, if they're going to go defense with their first pick. That does kind of seem counterintuitive. But also going best player available is never the worst thing to do. Big fan of Will Johnson there. Malachi Starks goes at pick number 7 to the Jets. I don't know if the organization is going to be willing to spend that kind of pick on him when in the second and even third round. You have some real quality defensive back pieces there that are marginally, if not possibly very slightly marginally worse than Malachi Starks. And I love Malachi. He's my number 1 defensive back in the class. And so, I have all the love for him in the world. I also am a relative realist at understanding the class. Then we got Tetairoa McMillan going at pick number 8 to the Carolina Panthers. It's a sure-handed receiver, so I do think that there is a role for him in there, but I also think that this class has options down the board that complement and actually improve the receiving core noticeably for a significantly less cost. You think of Tez Johnson, for example, being able to add him as a deep threat and even after the catch threat going forward. I think edge rusher certainly does have value down the board as well. Let's see what they do in round 2, but I do have my concerns with the Panthers going T-Mac, but at the same time, I also can understand why they would go with that route if they do select him. Will Campbell goes at pick number 9 to the Saints. I'm going to be real. I like Will Campbell, but the more I've watched him and when I updated his grade, I do think there are much better guard prospects in this class. I think there are better tackle to guard prospects as well. Will Campbell's a solid offensive lineman. I think that I do worry about his hip flexibility. That's why he has such a weird stance. I've seen him in 3-point stance quite often, and it does concern me noticeably because he just looks extremely uncomfortable. Now that might just be over analysis. We're gonna be able to see him in a number of games or a number of situations, including the combine, to see how he's going to look in certain stances and how his hip flexibility is, how his overall core strength is, being able to just see, if this guy has the ability to get to be an every down starter on the interior of the offensive line, because you cannot sit in a pretty much a crouched stance looking like you're taking a shit on a hill if you're sitting at the guard role. So I do have some concerns there. I do see arm length as being a concern. But Will Campbell's a good offensive lineman. He's my number 20 player in the class. But again, there are certain players where I feel like it's almost untouchable. They're untouchable. Will Campbell is starting to get to that territory to where if you actually say some legit negative things about him and Kelvin Banks, that it's all of a sudden like crucifiable. And so I do have to say there are legit concerns with Will Campbell. He's a good offensive lineman, but I think there are some other players in the class that provide a little bit more for your bang for your buck, especially. But Kelvin Banks is at pick number 10 for the Bears. I'm just going to be so real. I've tried so hard to love Kelvin Banks, and he is just one of those guys who I can't fall in love with. I think he's a very solid player, but I'm just going to be real. His feet are so slow. He's a slow athlete. Like, he is a very poor athlete. He's not nearly as powerful as you'd expect for someone of that size. He does not have the mobility, and I'm just seeing these fast NFL edge rushers really getting the edge on him. And I do have some concern over that. Kelvin Banks did a phenomenal job versus Ohio State, but I've also seen a lot of issues where even in his highly graded games, I don't know if it translates at that same rate. And I am very concerned. I'm just going to be real with y'all. I am very concerned. And we'll talk about it in the tackle video that's coming up soon. I'm almost done studying the tackles and then getting that out for you because doing my best. We are leaving for Mobile, Alabama in literally like a week and a couple hours. So we're going to do our best to get as much done as possible. No guarantees that we can get all of it done, but offensive tackle, 100%. We're going to try to do interior offensive line. It's a very thin class, so going to have the majority of those already done. But I digress. Kelvin Banks, I will say I might be the lowest out of everybody on planet Earth on Kelvin Banks. At number 11, we got the Niners going Mykel Williams to the Niners. By the way, Kelvin Banks to the Bears. Again, I just think that there's going to be better options for the Bears, especially for value. But this is a realistic move. I would just say I'd be a little bit concerned about him at tackle. But Mykel Williams to the 49ers, I would love it. Mykel needs to continue polishing. He actually got like progressively, exponentially better as the season went on because he got progressively more healthy as well. Like when he was at full health, I think this dude was actually doing a phenomenal job. And so I'm going to have a lot of faith in his progression ability, especially if you have a mentor there like Nick Bosa. Number 12, Ashton Jeanty seems like the easy fit. It's just, let's not waste time on it. Ashton Jeanty is going to be a good pick for the Cowboys. Jalen Walker goes at pick 13 for the Dolphins. It's a pick that Broshmo agreed with. Dolphins fans seem to love it. I'm going to respect it. He's a primary linebacker that I think should be also considered as a blitzing piece and more of just a jack of all trades. Tyler Warren goes to the Colts. Love that move. I mean, I just ended up dropping a 43-minute video breaking down my top 15, technically 16 tight ends in this draft. So feel free to go check those out. I do read a game report per player, so you guys get to see exactly what I think about these guys. And it's fair to say Tyler Warren is my number one tight end. James Pierce goes at 15 to the Falcons. I'm a big fan of that. They need edge help. James Pierce is phenomenal. I mean, you guys see where he's at on my board. I don't do stuff to be controversial. I'd be able to sleep perfectly at night if my board exactly matched the consensus. I could give a shit. Like, it has nothing to do with my ego. I just try to be as honest with you guys as possible with how I feel about certain players. Because the first overall pick is not always the best player in the class. Sometimes the best player in the class is someone like Puka Nacua, who's not even taken in the first 100 picks, right? And so you might look like an absolute idiot having Puka Nacua as like a top 5 player when he's not going in the top 100, right? But, then stuff like that happens. I'm not saying that's what I did, but I'm saying hypothetically, let's just say you had Andrew Phillips in your top 10, like I did, or maybe it was at number 11, top 15, and he doesn't go until the 80s. That doesn't mean that he is the 80th best player in the class. He ended up being a top 20 player out of last year's class, and that's okay. That's great. So before you judge, be willing, be open, but also be willing to criticize. Just don't be a dick about it. Understand that sometimes the consensus is wrong, and sometimes the consensus is right, and sometimes I'm wrong. So, that's the only thing I owe you guys is honesty. But regardless, we're back at number 16 with Nick Scorton. I don't know if he provides too much to the Cardinals defense. If I'm just going to be completely honest, I love Nick Scorton. Where's he at on my board? Man, he keeps going down because I start loving these interior offense or these tackle to guard prospects. Number 28 now I'm tripping. I ended up quoting the wrong guy. Where the hell do I have Nick? Number 24. Perfectly reasonable. Good value for him, but I just don't know if he provides the upside that a high quality defensive interior, like I'm seeing that he's not even selected in the next few. But Tyleik Williams, I really do think has jumped up noticeably for me to the point where I might put him at or above Mason Graham. Like, he's close. I got Omar Norman-Lott here for the insane upside. And then I have Tyleik Williams. I have Tyleik Williams at 37 on my board. But, with 2 points added to him, he is right there at Mason Graham's level. So, I've just seen so much progression from Tyleik Williams as the season went on. I think he's done a fantastic job. I think he'd be the best pick there for you guys at 16. Let's see what they do in the second round, though. Luther Burden goes at 17 to the Bengals. If you're looking for the after-the-catch threat, kind of the long-term Tyler Boyd for this team, that would be a solid move, but I do think there's so many issues with really good value here that there's just no reason to force a player who I personally don't have a ton of faith in. So, Luther Burden, really good player, but at the same time, when we're talking about a lot of other needs with a lot of other great value, I don't think you can logically say, hey, this is going to be somebody that I believe in as the best pick at this spot for the team. Josh Simmons goes at pick 18 for the Seahawks. I absolutely adore him. This grade is pre-injury, hence the plus sign. Plus sign is a preseason ending injury grade. And so before he ended up getting hurt, he was there for pretty much being close to the number 1 overall spot on my board. Josh Simmons is a fantastic player. I really do like him as a guard as well, as he continues to get healthy enough to play tackle in the long. Siobhan Rivell Jr. goes at 19 to the Bucs. I think corner is absolutely a valid pick to go with for the Buccaneers. I do have my concerns with Revell. You'll see every single post that tries to talk about Revell will have the picture of him versus Michigan. If I'm not mistaken, that was week 1 of 2023. I'm just going to put that out there. But he's 6'3", 193, has good range. I do have a solid enough grade on him, but I do have to say, it's not up to date from this year because all 22 for East Carolina within the first 3 games, not readily available. But I do say that I don't think he showed anything necessarily this year that we didn't see last year. And last year, it was good. But I also have my concerns in terms of this is a solid cornerback class, and this guy got hurt early in the year before he actually got to show out who he was versus top-end talent, and he's not going to be able to play at the Shrine either, according to Jim Nagy. So you might say Jim Nagy is the Reese's Senior Bowl. He just ended up commenting, surprisingly out of nowhere, on a tweet I ended up having because I thought I was getting a little bit excited to see Siobhan Rivell in Dallas here. But Colston Loveland goes at pick 20 to the Broncos. It's fair. I think you can end up getting good value down the board with another tight end for this system. But if you see the value that's best as Colston Loveland, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. He's a really solid tight end. Again, I have a 43-minute tight end video breaking down my top 16. You can feel free to check that out. Emeka Egbuka goes to the Steelers at 21. He's just a very solid receiver. People comp him to ARSB, and I don't think they're completely off with that at all. I think he's just a really smooth athlete. Will be able to get open. And I just don't think the Steelers need to continue targeting or need to target receiver in round 1. We've done a good job targeting them down the board. Of course, people do bring up the fact that those players have a very high hit rate in terms of being personality problems too, which might be the reason why they slip and might be the reason why we end up getting them for good value. And that's certainly a valid counter argument, but hopefully that's not the reason that they ended up slipping. And we end up actually just having a good eye for wide receivers. But I do think it would be an upgrade. I do think that I would not be mad. I'd want Ben Morrison, who, in how many days is it? 5 from now, we'll actually be able to know if he's coming out or not. If he does, I'd dream of him to the Steelers. If he does not, then, we'll go from there. Kenneth Grant goes at 22 to the Chargers. I do think that there's a multitude of issues on the Chargers, primarily interior offensive line, that could use a lot of help. Of course, with the strength of interior offensive line in this class, as I've studied and you guys can see on my board, I do think there's going to be a path to success. And, you don't need to do it in the first round. But that being said, I don't know if Kenneth Grant's ready. Of course, you're going to be sending him back to a system that he was his best in. So we'll see if that ends up continuing to be, path to success there for LA. Ben Morrison goes at 23 to the Packers. If he's available, that is going to be the dream pick. You guys see where I had him pre-injury. Then we have Walter Nolan at 24 to the Vikings. Again, dream pick here is a trade back because you guys need to get some extra draft capital, but at the same time, Walter Nolan is a very solid defensive interior. He is up to 305 pounds now. That is an old weight, but Walter Nolan, nonetheless, a very solid defensive interior coming off a very good year. Tyler Booker goes to the Texans at 25. They need offensive line like it's no one's business. Tyler Booker is an extremely high floor interior offensive lineman. At 26 for the Rams, they go Arianti Ursary. I mean, how Kevin Dotson played today, gonna be honest, wouldn't disagree with pretty much putting Ursary at that guard spot over him until he's ready to take over the left tackle spot. He has a lot of room to grow, but I really actually like him in that guard role. I do have him actually as primary of an interior offensive line for the first couple years of his career, and then finally a left tackle for the long. Josh Connolly goes at 27. You see exactly what I think about him. This dude has done a fantastic job. He's up to 315 pounds as well. Josh Connolly has done just a great job being able to build upon an already great platform of athleticism, and he ended up putting on a great re-anchor. I mean, the initial anchor could absolutely use some work, but he does re-anchor extremely well. The moment he starts getting backed up, he really can put his cleats and just stick into the dirt, and he has great power. He does a good job mirroring as well. Josh Connolly has a lot of potential if he goes to the right spot, and I would not mind it to be the Ravens at all, where he can end up playing guard and or tackle. Then we have Shedeur Stewart at 28 to the Lions. I mean, I am somebody who loves Shamar's upside and potential, but man, he is extremely raw. The question is, do the Lions believe that they're ready to go for the Super Bowl again without having your two coordinators? I don't know what's up with all this glazing right here, by the way. I don't know what's up with that, but Shedeur gets enough of it. We don't need to see any more of it on the screen. But Shedeur Stewart is it's another one of those players that have a cult following to where if you say anything negative about him, you get shamed. The dude is not good. He's a freak athlete who needs to go to a system and to a place where he has great mentorship. And I think he can absolutely be good. But the dude's extremely raw, and he's going to need time to develop. And we'll see how quickly he can, because he's done a good job developing over the year. But we're talking about the NFL here, where you're going up against the best of the best. And I did not think Shedeur Stewart showed that he's ready to face the best of the best. But if he has the hype and he has the right situation, I think he can end up doing a great job. Mike Green goes at 29 to the Washington Commanders. Honestly, at this point, you plug any defensive lineman to the Washington Commanders, I don't really care who it is. It's probably even a player I don't like Shedeur Stewart. And I like Shedeur, but again, compared to what people think of him, don't like. I think that you're going to do perfectly fine. Dan Quinn has shown that he really has a very solid grip as a head coach with, a great offensive mind in his arsenal to be able to pretty much make anything work. He had the worst roster coming into the year. I mean, limited weaponry. A rookie quarterback who has potential injury concerns coming into the year. An offensive line that really does have some crucial holes coming into the year. He had pretty much no top-name edge rushers. Really good defensive interior. Some washed linebackers. He had pretty mediocre cornerback play with a second-round rookie who's still developing as a former wide receiver. And he had a solid safety core. And he's made it into an unbelievable squad. So I have a lot of trust in Dan Quinn. You take Mike Green to him, who still needs a ton of development. People don't want to talk about the fact that, even though he had a lot of success was versus lower end talent. And you got to see if that translates. The 17 sacks, awesome. I love it. But he's a freak athlete who has some really good splash moves. You put him with a DC or a head coach / DC like Dan Quinn, I think he's going to shine. I think he's going to be absolutely fucking awesome. But I think there's also some worthy criticism there to where, he had success versus Ohio State when he was facing Josh Fryer and tight ends. We didn't get the luxury of seeing too many one-on-ones with Josh Simmons. So I will put that out there. Derek Harmon is next at pick number 30 to the Bills. Derek Harmon's a very, very good defensive player. I think the Bills could absolutely use a penetrator from the interior. Then we got Landon Jackson to the Eagles. I mean, I just don't think Landon's that good. I'm just going to be real. Again, I have an 83-minute edge video if you guys want to see me talk about the top 22 edge rushers in the 2025 NFL draft, where I end up breaking down every game, a game for every single player. Then you got Cam Williams to the Chiefs. This would be an absolute shit show. I mean, the Chiefs cannot develop offensive tackles to save their lives, and they're taking the most raw offensive tackle in the draft. I would have a moment of silence for Chiefs fans and a moment of silence for Cam Williams, because he could have went one pick before. If you're sold on him going in the first, I'd rather send him to Stout U all day than send him to Kansas City. It's like literally heaven and hell back to back, and yeah, not good. Round number 2, we got Jonas Savania going to the Browns. If I'm just going to be 100% honest, this guy is so far from being NFL ready. He's a fun player. I think that he just really has some technical flaws that make him almost unstartable early on. But he's someone who I really love, and I love the potential. His game versus, I'm trying to remember exactly which game I was quoting, but towards the end of the year, I'm trying to remember exactly which one it was. I ended up posting it over on X, so feel free to go check that out. But starting out early in the game, it was versus Baylor? No. But basically, he ended up flashing some great offensive tackle capabilities. But, I mean, as the game went on, there were just so many reps that he would have been absolutely destroyed in the NFL. And when he's doing his kick slide, the dude loses any sort of anchor that he has whatsoever. The dude almost trips over himself. And so I have a big concern with him as a left tackle. Still finishing up his evaluation as a right tackle, and then we'll go from there. Jalen Milroe at number 34 to the New York Giants. I think this would be nearly a fireable offense because Jalen needs so much development. And yeah, Brian Dable's probably that guy. But do you really think he's going to make an impact early on in his career? I don't think Jalen, at least at pick 34, would provide that level of security for the jobs that are very, very much on the hot seat there in Brian Dable and Joe Shane. Jalen needs a couple years to be able to continue growing and developing, unless he goes to a system similar to the Ravens. If you want to go, was it Monken? You can go after Monken there, and then you can end up, developing an offense around Jalen Milroe. But why would Monken leave Baltimore? Just going to be honest. And Jalen Milroe has so much to grow as a passer. I do think he understands he's going to be a late day 2 to day 3 pick. And, I do think there's going to be a lot of development needed. You need to be consistent in the NFL. Right now, Jalen Milroe is not. Princely Umar-Mieling goes at pick 35 for the Tennessee Titans. He's a really good edge rusher. I'm not going to complain about this one. But at the same time, I do think Princely does have a little bit of an issue with that first step. I've seen the acceleration definitely is something that is very hit or miss, and I would love to see that improve. But really solid pick there for the Titans. I do think that if you have solid offensive line capable picks, then I would say that might be more of bang for your buck, but Princely is a solid pick nonetheless. Jahdae Barron goes at 36 to the Jaguars. Does not fit Balky's criteria at all. He's a zone coverage corner who's sub 6 foot with short arms. It's just Trent Baalke's not going to vibe with that. And he's a fun player. He's a good player, but I just don't see that happening unless you're moving him to safety. Amarian Hampton is going at pick 37 to the Raiders. Home run hitter. I think that would work really well with Ben Johnson. He's just on it. I'm just going to be so real. His ceiling is Saquon Barkley. This is Saquon Barkley in Whole Foods' clearance section. That if everything is right, then this guy is going to be an absolute savage, and I think he's a 3-down back. I think he is the best back in the class because you don't have 8 fumbles on his record. That's another big thing. I love Ashton to death, but 8 fumbles is a legitimate thing. I don't care if they're second effort fumbles. If you fumble the ball 8 times in 2 years, it is something where, you need to have more self-awareness of what is happening with the ball when you're going through players, right? That is something that you need to still develop. I love him to death. That's why he's a blue chip player. He's number 8 overall, factoring in running back value position. But Amarian Hampton has just flourished as a superstar this year without having Drake May to essentially take a lot of the attention. And I love him to death. At number 37, that'd be ridiculous. Wyatt Milam at number 38 to the Patriots. I would not like this personally. I love Wyatt Milam. I have him at number 16 overall on my board now. So spoiler alert for the videos that will be coming up, but that will be as a guard grade. I think he is built to be a guard. And I still think he could end up working as a tackle, but the arm length really is a legitimate concern. It does pop up in the middle of the game, but his core strength is incredible. I posted multiple videos about him over on X. Again, feel free to go check that out. Donovan Jackson is at pick number 39 to the Bears. Fantastic move. Again, the only issue I would say is you might end up with Donovan Jackson as a long-term tackle and Kelvin Banks as a guard. That's where I'm at right there, because Kelvin Banks and Donovan Jackson are almost complete opposites at the same height and pretty much same weight. Donovan Jackson's a freak athlete with long arms and is just somebody who is built to play tackle and is just still polishing up. You have Kelvin Banks, who is literally he's a dreadnought. It's just like armed to the teeth. He does have like the ability to be a mauler when you want him to be, but the dude is slow as shit. Like, he is slow as molasses, I should say. And I would say legitimately Donovan Jackson might be the tackle out of the two. Tyreek goes at 40. You guys know what I think of Tyreek. I was saying he should be the pick at 16, but if he can end up slipping to 40 somehow, he won't. The Saints will be a great team to pick him up. And he is 327 pounds, by the way. These weights and heights are quite out of date, I must say. Jack Sawyer goes at pick 41. So we have a quick run of Ohio State players here to the Bears. He's willing to play in the cold. He doesn't like Michigan, so he'd be great to go against Detroit. He's going to be a solid edge 2/edge 3 in the NFL, just a high floor dude. I do think he's a bit overrated, but at the same time, if this is the range he's going, I'm pretty sure that's probably right around where I have him on my board. Cameron Rucker's still being regraded, but no, Jack Sawyer actually should be, by the grade, actually being around 50 on my board. So it's understandable, but again, some people glaze Jack Sawyer like he's a top 10 prospect. Trey Amos goes at 42 to the Jets. Excellent pick. He'd be a really solid corner 2 for him. You got Deion Walker for the Niners, another project player. I don't know if the Niners are perfectly in the place to go after Deion Walker with the amount of development he needs in the second round. I want someone with a little bit more early impact. Armand Membu goes at 44 to the Dallas Cowboys. I don't see the need for Armand Membu, if I'm just going to be completely honest. The value is incredible, but I mean, I'd prefer to go after someone who might be a left tackle and just say, Tyler Guyton, we want you to feel comfortable. Go back to right tackle where you have a bit more experience if you can really snipe somebody at this point. At number 45, I already saw my Steelers pick and I'm about to lose my shit, but it is what it is. At 45, we got Jihad Campbell going to the Colts. I would feel kind of depressed seeing this because I think Jihad needs to be in a system that would be willing to blitz him properly and use him as a proper edge rusher, because I think he is an edge rusher, number 1. He was the number 1 edge rusher in his high school class, ended up moving to linebacker because of the quantity of edges there in Bama. I would feel pretty depressed seeing one of my favorite players go to a system that I do not think suits him best. Alfred Collins goes at 46 to the Falcons. I don't see it really moving the needles for the Falcons. I don't see defensive interior being the position I would necessarily draft. TJ Sanders goes at 47 to the Cardinals. I personally would rather have gone, if you're going after the same archetype, go after JT Tuimoloau and then Tyreek Williams, then getting, Nick Scorton and TJ Sanders. And I love Nick Scorton and TJ Sanders, but I do see a little bit more utility out of, the combination that was very feasible in this situation. Then you got Kyle Kennard I just jumped down. Nicky Mawari going to the Dolphins at 48. Excellent value. He should be, I'm going to try my best to push him higher and higher and higher, because post-combine, this dude's going to shoot up. Like, every DC is going to be like, what can I do with a 6'3", 230 player who can be an absolute ball hawk and then be a pick 6 machine while running in like the 4.3s? He's going to be someone who's just going to be an absolute combine warrior. JT Tuimoloau goes at 49. Fantastic pick there for the Bengals. Still not a huge fan of the first round pick, but it is what it is. Kyle Kennard goes at 50 to the Seahawks. I think edge is an underrated position to address there for Seattle. Kyle Kennard's a damn good player. 51, you got Caleb Johnson to the Broncos. Not a fan of this one personally. I don't think Caleb Johnson is as fantastic as everyone wants to say he is. I think he's a very good back, but I do think he's a little bit more specific than I would say that you should be looking for a home run hitter. Caleb Johnson's one of those guys who I'd prefer to have a Travion Henderson with, and then having him be one of my primary backs, and then not really having that energy to be able to hit the home run. Caleb's done a fantastic job this past year, though. I'm still very high on him. It's just I do have a reserved opinion on Caleb compared to the consensus. Emory Jones at 52 to the Steelers would make me want to throw up and then cancel my Steelers fandom membership. I'd absolutely be pissed off, like livid. Emory Jones has a ton of potential as a guard, but I mean, I'm just going to be real. We have so many issues, and there's some great value here. This would be an absolutely wasted pick. Jordan Birch at number 53 goes to the Buccaneers. I just don't really see the vision for it. I'd prefer to go after somebody like Donovan Azurewaku to replace Joe Tryon-Shoyinka at this point. Omar Norman-Locke goes at 54 to the Packers. Fantastic upside there. It could end up being their future 3-tech and, crazy athlete. I'm a big fan of that. Trey Harris goes at 55 to the Chargers. There's also this cult around Trey Harris. I don't understand what's up with that. He's a solid receiver. Ole Miss needs to teach me what they're doing with marketing, because people just think that their players are literally sent by the Lord himself. And Trey Harris has had a ton of injury history. He's not the best athlete. He's not a very good route runner. He's a fun player to watch, but it's like the glazing's a little bit unreal. I do think Trey Harris is a solid receiver, but we are talking about the best of the best, and I don't know if I would take Trey Harris. I would take Demarcus Robinson over Trey Harris in a heartbeat, and he's a wide receiver 3. So that's just going to put my initial opinion out there at Trey Harris. So at 55, I don't think a wide receiver 4 is necessarily worth it to me. Xavier Watts goes to the Bills at number 56. Great value, interception machine. I do think that he has areas of growth, but he also grew a lot this year. 57, Max Hairston goes to the Carolina Panthers. I do think when you're neglecting the defensive line like this, it's a big issue. So I will have my big concern with that. And I don't think Max Hairston's really worth it at 57. At 58, Gray Zabel goes to the Texans. You guys saw what I think of Gray Zabel. He's my number 17 player of the class, right behind Wyatt Milam. The only reason he's number 17 is because of his experience against top-end talent, which he doesn't have a ton. But even facing Colorado's top-tier defensive line, like, if I'm not mistaken, Coach Sapp is, like, there, and he does a fantastic job. He dominated. It was his best performance of the year, and that was week 1. So this dude is coming in, and he's dominating, and I really do think that this guy has a future either as a tackle or as an interior in the NFL. I do think it ends up leaning a lot more towards the interior side of things, but I do think if you already got Tyler Booker, you're kind of getting a little too much, but at the same time, with that interior offensive line, too much might not be a bad thing. Donovan Azurewaku goes at 59 to the Baltimore Ravens. I respect it. Donovan Azurewaku's great value there. The Ravens need to continue developing their edge core, but if you can get a polished guy there at 59, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Isaiah Bond goes to the Lions at number 60. I feel like this would just be a backup for Jameson Williams in case J-Mo got hurt. And Isaiah Bond doesn't have a very good track record of reliability health-wise as of this past year. Doesn't really line up to me. I think Io Maynor, who goes at 61, would have been a better pick, but he ends up going to the Commanders. If you honestly swap the two, I think it might be even better for both teams. You got Tate Ratledge going at 62 to the Bills. I don't think interior offensive line is going to be a need for them whatsoever. I'd prefer for them to go after an edge rusher based on them going interior defensive line with Derek Harmon there in the first. I don't think that would be a good use of their draft capital. Then you got Harold Fannin going to the Eagles at 63. I love Harold Fannin to death. He is arguably my tight end 1 if he has 10 to 15 more pounds on him, but does not fit the Eagles. He's a tenacious blocker, but the Eagles do like a particular body type. Harold Fannin's not that. And then Shamar Turner goes at 64, a very fun player who I had top 30 or top 35 coming into the year. He ended up moving full-time defensive interior, and he's waiting, still getting a regrade, but he's a fun player nonetheless with a ton of upside. I don't think he would be really selected at 64 though. So I could go on, but again, I already talked about the fact that I do have some issues with what they're doing in the 3rd round. This is going to be the best representative use of both your time as well as mine. So I hope you guys did enjoy it. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.